Welcome to Powered by People, the podcast where the industry leaders finally sit in the hot seat. I'm your host, Abbey Graham, the director and co-founder of Everec, which is a specialist recruitment company within EV and clean tech. And we will be deep diving into people's past, their early childhood, what made them who they are today, and all of their motivations for moving forward. So let's get into it. Today's guest is someone I know really well. He is now the co-founder and COO of Amplify, and prior to that was the MD of Pogo Charge. I've helped him grow teams for both of his previous businesses, and he's always on the sharp edge of growth. So I'm really excited to welcome Stuart Douglas. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are
This is
you?
very cool.
I know. Thank you very much for coming on. I feel like after 3-year tenure, it was about time that I give something back and got you onto the podcast.
Has it been 3 years?
I think it has, Yeah, you were one of my first ever clients at Everec when we first started from marketing, and we've also done a podcast together on your side.
So. A lot has changed, hasn't it?
Yes, so much has changed, which I'm very excited to get into. We'll just jump straight into it. I want to ask you a first icebreaker question. Would you say you're currently running your business, or your business is currently running you?
That's a great first question. Yeah. Both, probably, is the honest answer. I think we've been really, really clear in terms of what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve that. But the day-to-day reality is always a little bit different. There's that reactive piece. And I think that's probably more applicable to us than it would have been in previous roles or organisations where everything's a bit more mature and stable. This is a lot more dynamic, and there is an element of being reactive, which means we're responding to market changes really quickly or customer feedback, and it's definitely shaping our behaviour as much as we're shaping the business. Yeah,
definitely, and I would agree. I think I'd say it depends what day you ask me, I think it is that co-founder founder piece, which we'll get onto, but it's so up and down, I think, because not everything's in your control a lot of the time, which is super interesting. So I want to go back to early life. I think let's start there. What were you like as a kid?
I've got to think whether or not my mum's going to watch this podcast before.
I did one the other day, and I said I'm an only child, and that's being tough. And then I thought, I didn't mean that.
No, I mean, my life honestly was just centred around sport as a kid. I was non-academic. Every day was a football or a tennis racket, and I was outdoorsy and not academic at all. So a busy mind probably is fair to say, and just out every single day doing something different. So a bit mad and probably a bit of a handful. So I think I've calmed down a lot. I hope I've calmed down a lot. And then I got into the kind of academic stuff later on. So I was really, really late, I think, to the party. I was all about socialising and all about having fun and doing sports and everything else that is good with life.
Yeah.
And then moved into work and the academic stuff much later. I mean, for example, I didn't really get into kind of proper office work or business activities probably until early 30s, to be honest. And I didn't even do my degree. I think I graduated when I was 40 or 39.
Yeah.
So really, really late. And like I said, sport, activities, football. I did relatively well with football, actually. It was something that I wanted to make a go of at one point in terms of becoming a professional footballer. Wasn't good enough, but had a really good experience there through schoolboy football with Oxford United and played for the county and lots of other, really fun experiences there, and it's probably shaped a lot of behaviours now, actually, that sporting background, in terms of being really, really competitive, and wanting to win, and being part of a team. It carries over really, really well.
Yeah, definitely. That was going to be something I said. I know just from working together, you always say you're so competitive, you always want to win. Do you think you've always had that in you, or is it from the sporting background? Do you think that created that?
I think it's always been in me, to be honest. It's one of those characteristics that I have to keep under control. Honestly, it is so bad sometimes. Every small thing there's competition baked into it. It's really a bit weird, but it is probably a superpower as well. And,
Definitely.
you know, it gets me up in the morning. It helps me want to go out and engage people and improve things and push things forward. So it's a useful trait. I hope it is, but probably really annoying for some people at times.
Yeah, it depends who you're speaking to
Yeah.
about it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that is really interesting. I think everyone that you do speak to that has started their own businesses or founded their own businesses or pretty high up in leadership, typically they are someone that has really loved sport or are quite competitive, or they've had something happen in their lives that has determined them to want to go after something. And I think that's definitely qualities of, people that are pretty high up in senior.
It will be interesting. I mean, you'll find out because you're going to ask the question every time.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see. Everybody will go, it was sport. I was really busy as a kid growing up and it was sport.
The competitive side, yeah, maybe it is. And I did psychology as an university degree, and I feel like that I'm so interested in kind of like that business side of what makes people tick and how you get to where you are today. So yeah, I really want to go into that a little bit more. Is there anything that you wish you had done as a kid that, I know you said you got into business like later on? Was there ever a point where you really regretted kind of going down that sport route for a little bit longer than you should have? Or
not really. I think everything happens for you at the right time. You know, I referenced there doing a degree a few years ago. I can't remember when I graduated, but I think I was probably about 39, maybe 40. So it was old. But I wouldn't have got as much from that if I had done that at 19, 20, 21. I've taken so much more from doing that at that age because, number one, I think I wanted to do it then. And number two, it was a lot more relevant to where I am and what I'm doing and where I want to go. So if I'd gone to university at sort of 18, 19, I probably would have done sports science, for example. It would have taken me on another journey and maybe a different one and a better one. There's no right or wrong. But it's certainly, whatever I did then, I don't think it would have been relevant to what I'm doing now. So there's ups and downs and sort of ins and outs to all of it, really. But I think, it's just where you are. You know, not everything is linear. So everybody goes on a different journey and takes a different path, and we all arrive at slightly different times, I think. And for some people, you know, you see these people coming out of university and they're 21, 22 years old, and by the age of 30, maybe case in point here, they've launched a business, they're successful. I could never have done that. I literally could never have done that in my 20s. I just didn't have the mindset at the time. But it's something that's kind of come through a bit later in life for me. So no, I don't think you can really have regrets. It's just the journey that you've been on, and I think it's all happened for a reason.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, hindsight's a funny thing, isn't it? But if everything works out, and if you're not in that kind of mindset when you're younger, I think there's two ways to look at it. You either feel like, I was obviously only 26 when I started the business, and I always think, gosh, I wonder what other 26-year-olds are doing. Like, I know people are still out drinking and having a party and, you know, living their lives. But on the other side of it, I think, you know, hopefully by the time I get to 40, I can be doing that again.
Be retired,
and
Abby.
It just depends, doesn't it? Yeah, which way around it goes. Is there any kind of like really key defining moments that you look back in your life that, as a child, that you do think like that's probably one of the main things that moulded me to be who I am today?
I would love to say yes, but no. I think there's been, and I don't think it ever stops. I think there have been so many points, and you add them all up, and then you get the sum at the end. There have been loads of different experiences at different times in my life, I think, that have shaped me and taken me to where I am today. Of course, there are experiences as a child, and then early leadership experiences, and then more recent ones. I mean, I look back at some of the people that I've worked with, and I would have been in awe of some of the leaders. Certainly, years at Stanley Black and Decker, before I joined Swarco, there were some world-class leaders in there at the time. And you look at those guys, men and women, and you take something from them, I think, but you also look and go, actually, that bit doesn't look or feel right. So you take a small bit from different experiences and put it into your own toolbox and use that a bit later. And there have been, I think probably from a work perspective, and I know you're trying to take me back to the childhood piece a bit here because that's where we are, but from a work perspective, that there were a couple of really key moments for me. There was a moment when I worked at Stanley Black and Decker whereby I was being dropped onto a leadership program and being mentored by a guy called James Clark, who was a quality operator, really good guy. And he sat me down and gave me a really, really basic discussion at one point, which was, we know where you are now and what you're doing now, but where are you going and what route would you like to take to get there? Because there are so many different ways that you can work through development. And I found that really, really useful to just sit down and kind of map something out, and to be given that opportunity of, reflection at quite a young age by someone who's really experienced and looking at where you want to go and what you want to achieve and helping you plot the route. That was a really big moment to be given some time there. And then another guy that's been really influential is a guy called Steve Murphy, who also unofficially has been a mentor, and has kind of coached me through operational roles. And we'll probably talk a bit more about that later on. But from a childhood perspective, no, I think my memories are a bit hazy, to be honest, to draw out a single point there. Probably some of the failures, Abby, have been big moments when I've wanted something and it's not happened, in terms of lighting that fire and going, right, what can you do? And ultimately all you can do is dig in and work a little bit harder to try and get something else over the line. And that's a good lesson to learn. And that's one that I learned probably quite early on, again, through the footballing piece. At 16, when you're on that cusp of, are you going to be signing a contract? Are you going to be kind of released, and then getting released and let go is something that stays with you, probably.
Yeah.
And that's a fear that you kind of carry with you at times, and you don't want to have that experience again. So it makes you work really, really hard every day, and you dig in and try and get the best of you every single day and make a difference. So that's probably the only one that I can draw on, but there've certainly been more as you kind of move through your working career, but I don't think it will ever stop. There isn't that one defining moment. I think there'll be another defining moment in 2 years, and another one in 5 years, and another one in 10 years, all the way through. There's never going to be this end point where everything's good and you've got a grasp of everything and it's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think that's real, and I think it's going to be a continual kind of lesson all the way through to the end.
No, I think that's so powerful. Yeah, it's very progressive. I think there's always something else to learn, something else to do. But yeah, I think that point about the fear, I think that it definitely fuels me, the fear of failure every day. I think it's a mixture of being competitive and that just innate, absolutely terrified. And it keeps you going, doesn't it? Because there's nothing worse than that failure. You'd rather do anything else but that.
Yeah, but if you've got experience of failure, right, and you look back and like we've just done, and you reflect on that, you can use that.
Definitely.
You can use that. So if there is another moment in 2 years or 5 years, and there probably will be, that's something that you can take that, right, and you can drive that and get another 5-10 years of motivation from that.
Yeah, and I think that obviously we've gone through early life, and we'll go on to a bit more of everything that you've discussed there with all of the points that you've gone through. But just going into an introduction of, I guess, early life and now what you're doing to get to where you are. So what have been like the key threads as you've discussed through the last question? You obviously started out at Stanley Black and Decker.
Yep.
Can you just kind of discuss that to where you are now? Yeah,
completely. So they've been commercial and operational roles. If I go back before Stanley Black and Decker, actually, I did have a role in my early 20s, which was quality management. And it was a really, really, if you're in quality management, you should cover your ears here, but it was a really boring job, or I found it really, really boring. But it's a really good way to get into a business, all of the departments and functions of a business, and understand how business works. And I felt that was really, really useful. And even now, that was 20 years ago, I still draw down on some of the experiences then today. So that was a really good kind of foundation. And then, more recently, Stanley Black and Decker had commercial roles there, product management and technology development management roles, which was introducing new products to the market in the UK. That was a really fun job. And it's got real relevance to what we're doing today, actually, because that was engaging, going out and engaging some of the innovation hubs and startups and looking at the new technology that was coming through in the UK, and either partnering with them or sponsoring them or launching them into a UK market with some form of commercial agreement in place. That was a really fun job, and it's related to what we're doing at Amplify, because obviously this is a relatively new brand, a new proposition-ish. So we've got some USPs, I would say, but the market's familiar with what we're doing, but the brand is quite new. So there are lessons there. But aside from that, it's all been operational. My background is almost all operational roles there, which is why I think the partnership with Anne Buckingham is so good. Anne's been a managing director, but she's got a deep background in sales and sales leadership and commercial roles as well. So we've got this really nice piece where I've got the operational side, Anne's got the sales commercial side, and we kind of cross over in the middle in terms of leadership and running a business. But the operational roles have all been slightly different. So I think probably the one where I was able to accelerate learning was through COVID, actually, working for Scalata in the UK, APT Scalata, because there were so many challenges so quickly with furloughs and scaling a business down using the furlough scheme and then scaling it back up really quickly when things opened. That was really, really useful. So it was a challenge and it was a really difficult time. But in terms of a learning piece, that was really, really good for me, because there were so many experiences that you'd expect to take in maybe 5 to 7 years, which were experienced in a couple of years there. So it was a really rocket propelled role. But that was across project delivery, field engineering, warehousing and logistics, technical support, call centre operations. And it was a really stable business, really great business, and it's still a great business today, and a market leader with sort of car parking, traffic management, and stadium access control solutions, and really great people in there. But that challenge of steering that through COVID, taking it down through furlough and then building it back up again on the other side, for full operation again was really, really good to learn. And then I also became an operations director for Swarco, looking after the EV charging proposition. And again, applying everything that I'd learned in other operational roles, but across the EV industry, which is really, really relevant to what we're doing today, into Amplify. And of course, the most recent one was Pogo Charge. As managing director, we had an aggressive scope there in terms of deploying really, really quickly, to meet the demands there of the business. And that's where we started working together, and again scaled a team, a really small team. I think we were 7 or 8 approximately, all the way up to probably 40, maybe 42, 44 at its peak. And then
quickly, didn't it?
I've jumped into Amplify.
Amazing. Yeah, no, there's such a wide range there. It's probably why you are so good at going into different roles and just being able to adapt and merge really quickly, because all of them things are very different in different industries, different kinds of roles, different kinds of backgrounds. And I think the COVID piece, the things that you learn so quickly in that crazy time, is probably set you up for 5 years of learning in any other situation. And for people that don't know Amplify, what is Amplify?
We provide EV charging services for anybody that operates EV chargers. So whether that's a private CPO or public CPO, local authorities, fleets, EHGV, we do everything from kind of design, electrical design, site design, product selection, back office selection, through to project delivery. And then the operation of their network as much as they want, really. So field servicing, back office support, all of the charging and payment services and roaming services that go around that. So that's the kind of value chain that we're offering. Some clients are using us for products, some are using us for install, some are using us for the operations and maintenance piece at the back end. Some will use us for the whole thing, end-to-end, full turnkey. But we're trying to do it slightly differently. So we're part of Sinewave Group, and they are NERS accredited, so grid connection specialist, electrical specialist, which gives us a really huge advantage. So when I say we're part of the group, I mean we we're deeply embedded in that group, and we share lots of or benefit from shared services. So the grid connection piece, the electrical design, great, that's in-house. The field engineering piece is really, really powerful as well, because we get to go out and maintain or look after EV chargers, but the engineering scope in sine wave means that it can extend beyond the charge point, and actually we can look after critical infrastructure like the substations and the feeder pillars and switchgear. So puts us in quite a unique position. And I think given the backgrounds that Anne and myself and actually the wider team, Scott and Steve, have got, means that we're applying a lot of lessons learned here, but with a blank canvas, which is a really luxurious place to be. You know, we look at what we've done before and what went well and what didn't go well, and we apply that I don't want to lose mindset across the top of it, and kind of map out a bit of a path to what we think and what I believe our customers think will be a really good service for them. So it's really important that we've got the electrical piece in-house, but also that we're agnostic.
Yeah.
And we can be really flexible and we can respond really quickly because we're agile. So I think we're in a good place. And, you know, the question that you asked at the start around, are you running the business? Is the business running you? I mean, it's a good reference point, because there are times when we have to react and respond because we've got a different request, or the market's moved, or something's happened. And I think in a big corporate setup, that's difficult to do. And I think at Amplify, it's really, really easy for us to do that. So it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, it's such a good collaboration. I remember when you first said that your partner was Sinewave, it just makes so much sense in terms of the partnership. I think the background that they have versus what you guys offer as your USP, it kind of merges really perfectly, and the customers on either side will benefit from whether it's your service or their kind of background in the engineering side. In terms of, I guess, the hardest things right now in the industry, what do you think are the biggest hurdles that you're going to have to overcome to make Amplify a success?
So I don't think they're Amplify hurdles. I think they're industry hurdles, to be honest. I think we've got two or three. I do think we need a stable policy. There's been a lot of policy change over the last few years, which I think has maybe not affected confidence, but it's made the market difficult to forecast and predict. You know, if you've got government changing policy every couple of years, that's very difficult. When you're making such significant investment, you want to know what the outcomes will be. And I think that's been difficult for people. So I would like to see some stabilisation around policy. I think a couple of other areas we need to address is the economics of public charging. There's such a big gap at the moment between public charging and home charging. And of course, we are part of the public charging world at Amplify, and so are the clients that we work with. One thing that will help that will be the changes to the VAT rate. So there are some court proceedings going on at the moment. I won't talk about them because we don't have time to, but people can Google it and find it. So home charging, VAT applied essentially at 5% and public charging at 20%. It's looking likely that we'll get more parity with those VAT rates moving forward, and that will really help, I think, with the commercials around public charging. And we've got a really good, you know, in Europe, I think some of the other European countries have blazed ahead of us, actually, and we've had challenges in the UK, and that's certainly not helped. But what we do have in the UK is a good platform for public EV charging, because there are so many properties in the UK, flats, apartments, those without driveways, those that can't have home charging. There will always be, I think, major significant demand for public charging, but we do need to get the commercial piece right, which is why I referenced the VAT rate there. And the final piece, I think, is alignment between planning, the grid applications, the legal process, just bringing that together somehow to try and streamline that process. So, of course, in previous roles, I've delivered public charging hubs. They are painful at times. They really are. You know, the complexities around planning, they're getting improved. The grid challenges are certainly there and will always be there. But there should be some solutions to support that with battery, BESS solutions. And the legal process is quite challenging when you go through lease arrangements and head leases. So some some policy, some arrangement that brings those pieces together, and whether that's a body like Charge UK, or whether that's going to be a government mandate, or another party that does something with that. But that, I think, if somebody can address those three challenges and streamline them and bring them together and make them easy for people to deal with, will drive the public EV charging market really, really well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's came on such a long way. Even like we said, the 3 years that we've known each other, a lot's changed since then, but things are moving in the right direction. I think everything just works as individual sections at the moment. There's nothing kind of overarching bringing it all together, which I think is probably one of the toughest things about the space at the moment. It all feels like it's very bitty, and it needs to come together as a holistic solution rather than it.
I think consolidation will help there, and be careful what you wish for, I guess.
I know.
We don't know what that's going to look like, so it's really difficult, but there are so many different players in the market. There are so many different CPOs. There are so many different hardware solutions. It's a busy market. It really is. And like you say, people are approaching things in a slightly different way. So when we talk about planning, or when we talk about grid applications, everybody's dealing with them in a slightly different way. And I think, calling for people, I'm going to offer some balance and be fair, but calling for people to address that and improve that is quite difficult when you've got 100 people screaming at you in a slightly different way, asking for slightly different things. If that comes down to 5, 7 or 10, that becomes a bit of an easier puzzle to crack. But even with the DNO space, we've got multiple DNO regions in the UK. Just conscious there that I'm using an acronym that people might not know. So this is your electricity provider, and it's regionalised. So you have, Scotland and Northern and South and Midlands, 7 I think across the UK, and they all work in a different way. So when you apply for your grid connection, you have to do it in a slightly different way. You have to build a substation maybe in a slightly different way. They have a different legal process, so it's really difficult for people. So some form of, great, there'll be consolidation in the market, but how about some consolidation of the processes as well, and some streamlining there, and that will just make things easier for people.
No, I agree, definitely. Obviously, you were at Pogo as an MD for 2-3 years, and then went into co-founding a startup. I personally know how crazy it is to go from a really secure, stable business and then just launch yourself into that startup world. How have you found being a co-founder? Yeah,
I think it's a brave thing to do. I think you've been braver than us. So we've been not lucky, because we've deliberately partnered, or not partnered, but joined Sinewave Group. So we've got, although the brand is new, we have got quite a lot of stability. We're quite lucky to be part of that group. So well funded, well structured, lots of shared services, because it's been really, really tough. Definitely the first few months, and you're across so much that you wouldn't normally be across. But we do benefit from walking straight through the door and having a finance department, a marketing department, an IT department, a warehouse, logistics. We get all of that from the get-go at Amplify. So we're quite lucky, really. It's the brand, I think, that is new. And that has taken a lot of work in itself to launch that into the market. I mean, the first 3 months, honestly, a whirlwind, an absolute whirlwind. You are everywhere, doing everything, in conversations at all different levels, all different scales, across every single spectrum you can imagine. So it is a bit, it's bonkers, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been in that corporate space now for 15, maybe 20 years. And I think as you work through different roles, you end up with teams of people around you that deal with detail, and I'm looking forward to getting back there, to be honest with you, because we're to have to talk about and think about so many small things is really, really tough, so everything, I've said this to you before, I think everything in a business is about people and getting the right people around you. And of course, we've got a smaller, leaner team than we would have had in previous roles, which we are building. And luckily, we've got the shared services. But the big difference is that, I think, that defined process, a mature organisation where you've got lots of people around you that are taking care of the detail, probably without you knowing it. And actually, in a startup, everything that's going on almost every day. And that's a lot of information to be across. And again, whether it's marketing or it's IT or it's finance or it's what's going on with the warehouse, you're across all of that detail. And it does stretch you. So it's fun. It's a fun place to be.
Yeah, definitely. But I know what you mean, coming from somewhere where there's a person for every specific
Sure.
thing you could need, and to actually
Yeah.
having to have visibility on it yourself, is a lot. And we've kind of touched on Anne Buckingham. How have you found co-founding with her? Is it been really easy in terms of you know what roles she's really good at and you know what you do? How has that dynamic been?
I think you've nailed it, to be honest. So Anne and I are familiar with each other. We've worked together before in previous roles. We're both managing directors at Swarco. So really, really familiar with who had which skill set and where the overlaps would be. And I think actually then jumping in and doing this, it's been better than we'd anticipated in terms of those skill sets and where all of the activities and ownership would drop. So Anne's, again, you know Anne, she's a collaborator, she's people driven, she's really engaging, she is a powerhouse in the industry for sure. And again, it's somebody that I can work with and learn from at the same time, which is really, really lucky. It's a really good place to be. Anne's got a lot of experience. You know, we've held similar roles, but Anne's got a depth there that I haven't got yet because I'm significantly younger than Anne. She won't mind me saying.
I bet you will.
No, look, she's awesome. I mean, she's a business partner. She's a mentor, and you know, those gaps. I think it's a really big part actually of moving through work is you recognise or start to learn where your gaps are.
Yeah.
And understanding those and accepting them, that's a really, really big part of that journey, I believe. And that's where the Anne piece comes in really, really well in terms of my gaps are here. She knows where they are and she'll jump on them and address them or manage them with me. So it's been a really good partnership. And I'm really looking forward to the next 3, 5, 10 years in terms of building this with her.
Yeah, definitely. I think having someone that you can respect and have on a friend level as well, because they can actually point out and say, you know, I don't think you're so good at that. Do you want me to take that over in a very considered way that doesn't feel offensive? But it's the same for George and I. We're complete polar opposites, and the things that he is good at, I don't want to touch, and the other way around. And it's really nice having that kind of co-founder partnership, because you don't feel like you're doing it alone, although it's lonely it's a lonely place, even if you do have a team around you, which I'm sure you agree. It feels a little less lonely.
Yeah, for sure. And you have ups and downs, right? And then having somebody there who knows you and they can see where you are one week and give you that boost of energy or take something off you or give you something else to do is really, really useful. But the gaps, going back to the gaps bit again, I can remember, and I can't remember who it was actually, so apologies for not naming them, but I worked for somebody once who gave me a book to read, and it was called Strength Finder. And the concept of the book is you go through this book and you complete some activities and it tells you where your strengths are and where your gaps are. Mm-hmm. And what you would typically expect, I think, as an outcome is go and work on these gaps that you've got. And it isn't that. It isn't that. It's go and work on the strengths that you've got and forget these bits, because you're never going to be great at them, but go and be absolutely awesome at these 3, 4, 5 bits. And that's the bit that I think Anne and I are doing. So Anne will go and do the bits that she's amazing at already and become super amazing. And I'm working on the bits that I'm strong at and hopefully will become even stronger in.
That's such a good way to put it. I haven't actually thought about it like that. I've never heard it so considered, spoken out loud, but that's what you do in a business, isn't it? You just go and do what you're good at, but actually the realisation behind that is so important.
For sure. I don't think you can apply it everywhere, but if you look at the school system, and I know we're not here to talk about the school system, but it's a good analogy. You know, if you are absolutely amazing at sport and you've got the potential to become a professional athlete, and you are rubbish at art or rubbish at French and you never want to speak French or go to France, or you never want to do art, why don't you give that time back and apply it on the sport element to become even better at that piece, right? And there are always going to be some core elements that you have to have whether that's in school or in business, but there are others that you can trade. So if you're going to run a business, you have to understand finance, right? You have to understand people, you have to understand your market. But if you're never going to be great at selling, let somebody else go and do the selling. If you're never going to be awesome at project delivery, let somebody else go and deliver the projects for you. Great. And that's what makes somebody, I think, a really good leader, and that's what can make a business really, really great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think we'll definitely take points from that as we move forward. Give us some kind of, if you reflect on since Amplify, what's been the toughest moment so far and what's been the best moment so far?
I think the toughest moment has been probably losing our first bid or our first tender submission. You know, I think you approach everything with so much enthusiasm and belief, and you put so much energy into everything, and you think you can win absolutely everything. So, you know, being on the end of that first loss has been really hard in terms of a tender submission. Of course, every business, you can't have a 100% win rate. If you get 50% win rate, I think you're doing really, really well. So it's always going to happen. So, you know, it's not an arrogant mindset. But I think when you're submitting those first ones, you've got so much, you've put so much into it, and you've got so much hanging on it that there's been a couple that have been really disappointing where we felt we could deliver a really good project for somebody, and we've not had that opportunity. That's probably been the hardest part. I think that will get easier. You know, I'll never be happy with losing anything that we do in the workplace, but it'll get easier as we get bigger and we've got more that we're delivering, and more distractions. But those early ones from, you know, 4 or 5 months ago that we lost have been painful.
Especially that competitive streak coming in. I really bet that was bad for the ego.
Exactly that. But you do what everybody else does, and you take that and you look at it and you analyse it and you think about what you need to do next time and what you need to do differently, and you apply that. Yeah,
learning curve, I think, but sometimes it's completely out of your control, and it's not a case of you could have done anything differently. It's just, it is what it is, definitely. Of course, we know each other via hiring. We've done quite a lot of roles together now, obviously through Pogo, did a lot of legal projects, the whole rift of it, I think. What would you say the hardest thing about hiring is in this industry? And don't say the recruiter.
No, the hardest thing about hiring, I think it's still quite a new. I say it's a new industry, and also at times say this is really maturing now, this market. But it is quite new, and it's quite nuanced, this industry, and that's why actually a couple of times we reached outside when we worked together. We reached outside of the EV sector, so the skill set and the experience, I think, can be quite limited at times in this space because it's 10, 15 years old. You know, and you don't have that depth of knowledge that you might get in other markets where somebody has been in the sector for 30 years and they are an expert on this or an expert on that. So that's what's different probably about our sector, and that's why, not for every role of course, but for some roles I was really keen to look outside of sectors that I felt could bring the skill set that we would need, but then actually complement it with something additional that we don't have. And whether that's depth of experience or whether it's something slightly different in terms of the way they process a particular thing or the way that they engage or build a team. So I like diversity in the teams, and that includes their background, diversity of background. So I don't think we have to just hire from within all of the time, though that might be made easier with some of the consolidation that will happen in the market. But I'd say that's probably been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I think the roles that we have in the industry today, they're so layered. There's a lot to it because you need to know potentially the energy, potentially the background, potentially the operations of it. And I think unless you've done a full turnkey solution from end to end in an EV project, it's typically harder to move into the sector easily. But if you can look away from the unicorn kind of candidate and look about what the actual skill sets they have and how they can be a talent within the space, I think that's really helpful, which you've always been very good at. I think when you've been very open-minded when hiring around the skill set. It's not what is perfect, it's about what you actually need them to do. And if they can do that or have done that in similar kind of crossovers, then therefore we can teach them EV.
Yep.
Which I think is probably why you've had some of the best performing teams because of that.
And character.
Yeah.
As well, the character. I mean, you can train people on certain things, right? It's going to be really difficult to change their mindset or their character. So if you get a team of people who want to win, want to work hard, want to do the right things, are flexible, engage with each other really, really well, well, actually, if I need to train them on a system or a process, that's the easy bit.
Yeah.
So for me, that's probably number one on the list is, have they got the character that we want? Is it a cultural fit? You know, have they got the mindset, the right mindset for us? The other bits we can add on. Again, not every role. You know, engineering roles, electrical engineers, that will take 2, 3 years, 4 years. But certainly other roles or crossover from other industries, the EV element is something that can be taught.
100%. And in terms of, I think a lot of people that are watching or listening to this may be candidates, may be looking to get into the sector, may already be working here and interviewing. What are your kind of top tips for interviewing?
Ooh, that wasn't on our sheet, Abby.
No. Curveball there.
Top tips for interviewing. Number one, definitely just be yourself. Relax. Don't try and roll off scripted answers. Just be really relaxed and have a really honest and open chat that represents you as a person and the real you. Without a doubt, that is number one. And I think by doing that, you can show who you are and you can show that you're authentic and all of the other things that are really, really important. They might not be the things that you're being scored for in an interview, but they give the interviewer that feeling of they were great, I think, when you walk away, because you can actually engage with somebody and build a rapport with somebody. And then, I guess, look, secondly, prepare for the interview. Understand the organisation and the people that you're talking to, and make it clear to them that you know what they're about and what they're trying to achieve, and demonstrate how you can add value and help them, you know, on their journey.
Is there a big no-no for you in an interview?
Yeah, don't be late.
Yeah.
I hate it. I can't help it. You know, if I'm going for an interview or anything, actually, any important meeting, I mean, case in point today, I'll always be early for something like that, which mitigates. And actually, my train was cancelled this morning. And if I was planning to get here bang on 9 o'clock, I would have been late. So get there early. Don't be late to an interview.
Good point. I think it shows how you potentially would come and take the role and the respect that you have for yourself, essentially. Obviously, you can't help things going wrong now and again. But yeah, I agree, lateness.
It's the first impression. It's a tough one to get over, I think.
Definitely. Okay, and I know we've spoken a lot about you bringing other people into the sectors from outside different industries. If someone's looking to get into this sector and they're not typically from this industry, how would you say that you would look at a CV and what they can put on their CV to make them stand out?
Yeah. I would advise them to try and understand or investigate where the transferable skills sit in terms of their background, their capability, and how they can communicate that into an EV-based role. So easier for some than others. I think sales roles, project delivery roles, you know, relatively comfortable in terms of transferability. Other roles a bit more difficult. So maybe pluck out a few case studies on the internet, whether that's been a project that's been delivered by a CPO or a project that's been delivered by somebody like Amplify EV. Read through a case study, take a look at where your role maybe would sit within that case study, and then look at how you communicate that in your CV in terms of the skills that would have been used to deliver some of the outcomes on a case study. Maybe attach that to your CV. Maybe attach some additional commentary. Here's my CV. It doesn't have EV relevant experience, but what I have done is this, this, and this. And I've seen that you guys have delivered a project here, and what I would have done is 1, 2, and 3. That would be really, really powerful.
Very good advice. We've spoke about us hiring together and the importance of it. I'm very lucky that you've took me from Pogo. Also, I've hired for eVolt for you, Swarco side, and now we're working together at Amplify. I guess you must think there is a huge importance of having an external recruiter or a specialist. why have you chosen to do that?
I think the value that you bring is engagement with a wider market that we don't know. Not only within EV but outside of EV, there's crossover, I think, with the sectors that you work in, which we would not be engaged with. So it opens up a wider talent pool, to be honest with you. And we would typically engage people that are looking for a role. I think you will approach people that you maybe know, and they might not be advertising yet, but might be looking for 6-12 months. So you it's your specialism, isn't it? It's, spoken about, get people in to do the things that they're good at. That's the bit that you guys have been really, really good at. It's finding the right candidates. But I love the fact that the scope spans, the automobile industry and manufacturing industries and solar industries. And we're quite insular at times, I think, in the EV sector. And we'll look for EV people within the EV world, but actually you have got those overlapping worlds and pools of people that we're not tapped into. So that's where the value comes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we obviously started out just EV charging and EV as a whole. I did the EV charging, the infrastructure side, and then George did the actual EV manufacturing itself. And because of the need to bring people in from the outside sectors, we've actually now grown our business to be more battery, solar, wind. And I think it's so transferable. Like you say, it's important that your recruiter has outside scope to be able to bring in, because you do see the same profiles getting passed around, you see the same pools of candidates, and I think that is really supportive of the industry and the ideas that are coming into it and how it can push it forward a lot more, which is good. So being a co-founder, a senior leader, and doing everything that you do, I imagine can be very stressful. What do you actually do to keep yourself sane? A
couple of things. Exercise is a really good outlet. I think it's a good outlet for everybody. But I also enjoy TV. Something that's really easy, mind-numbing to watch before I go to bed is a really good way of just letting everything go and just calming down, and putting myself to sleep. So those two things. What about you?
I don't. That's probably why I'm crazy. No, I really need to get better at that outlet. I think the longer you go on with doing what you're doing, I think the more easier it is to catch yourself and be like, you probably need some time out right now. But I do like a bit of Pilates now and again, a little bit of yoga. I do try to read quite a lot, but by the time I get home at 8 o'clock or whatever, I must have about half an hour before I'm asleep at 8:30. Sleeping for me, as much as I possibly can, I must get at least like 9 hours in every night, because that's where the only time I switch off, when my brain isn't thinking. The second I wake up, it's like I'm running a marathon. My mind just kicks into gear. So lying down, shutting my eyes in a dark room.
It's the mental side, isn't it? It's the switch off. It's really, really difficult, I think. And that is one of the differences between, being a managing director in a corporate world versus being a COO and a co-founder. It's very difficult to switch off. It's so difficult to switch off. So it's just finding those things that force you, which is why I say exercise. I mean, if your heart's racing and you're struggling to breathe, the last thing you're thinking about is what's going on LinkedIn or somewhere else. You just want to stay alive.
Yeah.
The other thing that I dip in and out of from time to time is climbing as well. And that's another good one. Fresh air exercise, a bit of danger from time to time, and that's really, really healthy.
Like bouldering
for the mind.
Or climbing
Both.
mountains?
So both, actually. Both. I've not been for a while. I do need to go. Probably last year. I've done a handful. I mean, did Ben Nevis in the snow, a proper climb with ice axes and ropes and crampons and everything else. That's really cool. So that will focus your mind on not falling off and less about work.
Yeah.
And bouldering is another good one. So do a bit of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping to get a dog next year, and I think that's going to be my outlet, my saving grace.
Yeah.
To just do something other than thinking about business and life, because you've got something to look after.
And
I think
podcasts.
when you have kids,
whether you're on a podcast, or listening to a podcast, it's a good outlet.
There you go. Yeah, don't think I'll be listening to this one back though. Rogue One, give us a fun fact about yourself.
I can play the piano.
Can you?
Yeah.
Never. Well,
No.
how many songs?
2.
What are they?
Happy birthday. And chopsticks.
Amazing. Well, next time
Yeah.
we're on here, I'm going to get a little keyboard for
I'll
you.
do it.
and
I'll play you
wanna-
happy birthday.
Actually, I need a jingle for this podcast, so if you could just
Send it over.
do that, that'd be great.
Will do.
Champion.
Yeah. Fun fact about you?
Fun fact about me. I can make a really loud noise.
Well, this is the perfect place.
It's pretty impressive.
Okay, I think that's the end of our
Yeah.
podcast. Thanks for having me in.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay. I think we will move on to our last question, which is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Can I give you 2?
Yes.
We can always edit one out. I think, well, I've kind of spoken about one already in the previous answers, and I think it's that strengths and skills piece and focusing on developing the areas that you're really, really strong in and taking them to another level as opposed to addressing your gaps. I think there will be some gaps that you've got to address, right? I'm not telling people to ignore them. But if your skill set is communication, or your skill set is selling, or your skill set is operational efficiency, it's working on those and making them even stronger than they were before. And I think that there's so much value to be derived from doing that. And it's something that I've tried to do myself, and it's something that I've enjoyed doing, and I hope it's worked. And then the other one is health. You know, it's making sure that you don't get so consumed by work, and people are going to say pot and kettle probably when they hear me talking about this, but you have to take time away from work. You have to look after your health. If you put so much into work that you can't function properly at home, and you're facing burnout, then you're no good to anybody, let alone yourself. So I think just keeping that healthy mindset in your pocket from time to time is something that's important for everybody.
Amazing. No, I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to end. Thank you for coming on, Stuart. And yeah, looking forward to seeing where the next 3 years get us.
Thank you, Abby.